Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy, and joining me this morning, my guest, Justin Victor. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, Kris. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, so Justin was trained in psychoacoustics by the world-renowned sound therapist Dr. Jeffrey Thompson through the Center of Neuroacoustic Research in California, and received his certification for reconnective healing in New York. He also does touch for health and bioenergetics, using a manual for using manual muscle feedback while working on the body's meridians and energy systems for supporting one's harmony of life energy, emotions, and posture. So his background in laboratory work, research, and publishing in earth sciences has helped him integrate traditional wisdom with cutting edge science and apply it to his work in psychoacoustics for balancing the body and the mind with precisely tuned sounds and vibrations. That's a lot of information. So maybe you can just start off and tell us a little bit about psychoacoustics and neuroacoustics and what really is this science like?
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
And the work that I do doesn't feel as heavy as it sounds. So
Mhm.
essentially, psychoacoustics utilizes precisely tuned sound frequencies and vibrations to stimulate or rather modulate the autonomic nervous system. Now, people know what that is, they just don't know the terminology behind it. The fight or flight and rest and digest responses are both part of the autonomic nervous system. So when I say that, I'm referring to just those two. There's another division as well, but just those two. And so essentially, I am bringing people to a zero stress point because most people are familiar with just the two of those: fight or flight, rest and digest. But what's never talked about is that you actually can't heal in either of those. And I mean physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing. You physiologically you can't do it because your energy is tied up in one of those reservoirs when you are having a stress response or you're having a rest and digest response. Those are different functions. And so essentially
Mhm.
I am finding a frequency for each person, which is unique like a fingerprint, to bring them back to the zero stress point. That is the safe place.
Mhm. Something that, people who have been through trauma, whether it be, relationship trauma or, an accident, whatever it could be, don't know how to get back to that state. So this is a type of system that could help them do that.
Yeah, I mean, people don't even have to try, right?
Yeah.
They just allow themselves to experience it, and I'm connecting people with a heart rate variability device. So I'm measuring their
Mhm.
heart rate in real time, and that's
Mhm.
calculating the variability in their heart rate, which is a gold standard in Western medicine for longevity, resilience, general health. And then that's the interface to the actual fight or flight, rest and digest responses. And
Mhm.
so I can seal that in real time. I can see which response someone's in, their energy levels, subconscious activity, not what they're thinking. So people don't need to worry about that. But essentially, I'm getting all this information in real time, and it's not biofeedback because I'm not feeding this information back to them
Mhm.
to like small mind here to big mind here. They're actually just lying there experiencing that, and I'm guiding them through that process. But essentially, I'm just finding that frequency, bringing them to that zero stress state, and then having them oscillate around it. So it's not about staying in zero stress, although some people hang around there for a little bit longer, which is kind of cool to watch. But they're
Mhm.
going
Mhm.
through stress, relaxation, in, out, in, out. That's ideal. That's what you'd want day to day because
Mhm.
not only are you getting the healing place of the zero stress point, which is a prerequisite for any and all healing, but you're also not getting stuck, right? You're not getting stuck in a stress
Right.
response, which is often what I see when people come in to see me. And I'm doing like a free 30-minute stress monitoring thing where I'll just check their stress response for them. I'll ask them throughout that, how do you feel? How do you feel? Most people say, okay, good, it's fine.
Mhm.
And then the majority of the people, 80, 90% of them, that's a chronic stress response that I see on the screen. That's what fine feels like to them. Here,
Mhm.
the
Yeah, because you
body,
get used to it, right? Yeah.
it's allostatic load. You adapt to the stressors over time. And so in a way, the body's kind of like, well, I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm doing something right. So I'm going to
Yeah.
stay here a little bit longer at the
Mhm.
expense of my immunity, my digestion, my higher brain centers. And
Mhm.
I can't cope up to a certain point with everything going on in the world stress wise. And the system was not designed for this. It was
Mm-hmm.
designed for a sprint, not a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
It could be an actual literal sprint, like, how many thousands of years ago running from a predator. And even though we're not generally doing that anymore, the system responds the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, I'm trying to break someone out of a stress response, and then the body will start to get conditioned to go back to zero stress.
Mm-hmm.
But the alternative could be the case too. So you mentioned people with severe trauma, even PTSD. The work that I do with
Mm-hmm.
that, it's actually not a stress response at all. It's a relaxation response. They're stuck in a chronic relaxation response because
Mm-hmm.
they've blown their stress response on a series of stressors and they have no stress response left. So they might be chronically fatigued. That's one part of it. They could be, in law enforcement or military, that kind of thing. I've done a little bit of work with that. And so I'm literally
Mm-hmm.
trying to bring their stress response back so that they can get to zero stress and actually start functioning normally again.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So if somebody was like, who are your clients? Like, who comes to you for this type of service?
It can be very basic stuff. It could just be sleep issues,
Mm-hmm.
that plague a lot of people. And that's a conversation with other things. But essentially, I start doing brainwave entrainment to deep sleep states before I even, go and do other stuff. Now, brainwave entrainment, for those that don't know, you have a speed of brainwave activity. So it's going from the back here across to the front, just like that electrical activity. And that's happening at a certain speed every moment. So every single part of your life, you have a brainwave speed that's categorizing your state of consciousness. It could be a deep delta for sleep, or high meditative state in gamma. But essentially, it's like a brain's respiration rate, just as you would breathe differently if you were, sleeping, eating, exercising, whatever it might be. The brain has this respiration rate too. So not only am I bringing someone to zero stress, but I am entraining their brainwaves to a specific state that they need at that moment. And everyone starts in delta because that's not only physical, but it's mental, emotional, self-defeating belief systems. All that stuff happens there. And that's essentially where the system starts to work on itself and takes care of everything else that could come up. Because, I mentioned just basic sleep. So like I said, it
Mm-hmm.
could be just a sleep issue, but
Mm-hmm.
often it's going to be more than that. It's multifaceted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it could be anywhere up to severe psychiatric disturbances, epilepsy, bipolar, schizophrenia, anything like that, because
Mm-hmm.
those are altered brainwave states. In research,
Mm-hmm.
they've been implicated in specific brainwave frequencies that I can entrain them to bring that functionality back, and at the same time bring them to a zero stress point to support the healing that they need. So, I've worked with older people, adults, kids, teenagers, and everyone's eligible for it. Even if someone
Mm-hmm.
is, paraplegic, they're incapacitated,
Mm-hmm.
incapacitated. I can still, um, you know, help them in that regard because everyone's got a stress response.
Right. So I know that from having spoke with you before that there are other uses of what you're doing. So when you talk about the brainwave state, so it's not just for healing and bringing people back into that state. You can use it for other states of consciousness. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, for the majority of people that come in, they are wanting some kind of a fixing. They want me to take care of something specific set of symptoms. Could be a grocery list of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
essentially, in that way, everyone starts in the healing phase. So,
Mm-hmm.
but basically, say let's take something like theta. Theta is a brainwave state associated with emotional healing. That's the healing function. But every
Mm-hmm.
brainwave state triples in function. There's healing, there's meditation, and then there's everyday function. So for theta, that's all creativity. If you have an artistic kind of vocation, then that could be of use to you, among other things. It's not bad to have that trained up, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then there's a meditative function and shamanic journeying, Christian prayer states, chakra
Mm-hmm.
visualizations. Every single of the 21 different brainwave states that I have has that functionality. So when people come in for a session, not only am I finding their frequency in the first session, I'm also letting them experience the track, and then they take it home with them. So essentially, they come to see me for a session, and then they have that track forever to have an unlimited number of sessions throughout their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are more brainwave states that would be useful, but at least they have that. And once they've built up, a few sessions, they can play around with that as long as they want and
Mhm.
use it for those different functions. So people are
Mhm.
usually familiar with the delta, theta, alpha, and gamma brainwave states. That's what literature is conventionally stuck in. There's a lot of research into fault mode network, which is our complete sense of self. 95% of our brainwave activity is there below the hood, and
Mhm.
that's implicated in a lot of dissociative psychological disorders.
Mhm.
So between each of those, say between theta and alpha, that's around the Schumann resonance. So we're also looking at emotional intelligence. We have the mental alpha combined with emotional theta to entrain you to that aspect of it. It's
Mhm.
looking at the other gender's point of view. Like I said, Schumann resonance is in there. So in between each of these states, there are enhancement capacities. We
Mhm.
can now escape that disposition of being no longer broken that you might have in the subconscious and now move into enhancing specific abilities. But like I said, we can use this for healing as well and meditation. So if someone wants to go beyond that, because there's another phase beyond that, there's the enhancement phase after healing, there's an expansion, which is transcending way beyond what current science is recognizing for brainwave states. So I'm talking about frequencies as slow as level of plant respiration. So, for
Mhm.
example, iota is what it's called. Down there, we have brainwave frequencies at the speed of like zero point zero 0.01 hertz, which essentially just means 1% of your brainwave has lit up electrically every second. Now, if you're watching this right now, it's probably around a beta, somewhere in a beta, which is 13 to 30 times it's a focus. So we're going down to 1%. That's
Mhm.
entraining you to the source of the heart of life itself, at that level of
Mhm.
the food chain. Or I can
Right.
go really high up with frequencies that would be associated with pulling energy from the environment that would be reminiscent or analogous to monks meditating in the mountains and melting snow around them.
Mhm. Yeah, because I was interested too. You mentioned like several states, but you mentioned a Christian state. Like, is that
Mhm.
like the state, the mysticism, the mystic state that you would take somebody into when they're in a
Yeah, like
prayer
like
state or
theta,
connected?
like a walking, talking with angels kind of thing. That
Oh,
kind
okay.
of a
Hmm.
perspective with theta. Yeah.
Hmm. Oh, okay. Cool.
Mhm.
And you had also mentioned like a lambda state. Can you
Yes.
tell us what that
Uh,
is?
that is the flip side of the iota. So where the iota is really slow, the lambda is quite high. It's excess of 200 hertz binaural beat, which so 200
Mhm.
cycles per second or more across the brainwave, across the cortex of the brain, essentially.
Mhm.
And so these are experimental. Iota, hypergamma. Hypergamma is about 100 plus hertz. People are usually familiar with gamma, but essentially the iota, hypergamma, and lambda are more experimental because they haven't been studied. But I still have the frequencies. I can still entrain people to that. And there's no
Mhm.
reason to believe that these are the basements and ceilings of brain waves. I've heard of quite faster frequencies, but it's not getting the scientific attention that it probably deserves. So yeah,
Mhm.
for Lambda, I've entrained myself to that, and that's you're not going to find anywhere else unless you go to like an ashram somewhere in the mountains in
Mhm.
Tibet, got trained to do that. We can put
Yeah.
you right in the middle of that. We don't have to
Right.
train for 20, 30, 40 years to get to that brainwave state. We can just put you right in the middle of that, you know?
Mhm. Right.
And what kind of a healing function is that? Well, I mean, you're pulling energy in, and who knows what the body will do with that once it has that energy and it works on its grocery list of symptoms
Yeah.
that people usually focus on with theirs at the very top. But the body has its own, there's a method to its madness, if you will, because people, they have one symptom that's in the spotlight, right? And that's what they're focused on. But that could be number 5, 6, 70 on the list of what the body needs to do. And I'm going to
Mhm.
trust the body every time because it knows how to grow itself out of two cells, that intelligence, right?
Right. So it seems like we're actually training ourselves to be in that 0 point. So we talk about being in the 0 point, and that's when the clarity and all of the insights and things come to us. Because when we're in that fight or flight, we're just trying to survive, right? And is that
Yeah.
kind of what you're trying
Yeah.
to do,
And
is get people to that point?
And ideally, when people are listening to the tracks, they'd have earbuds or headphones, because when you do that, the hemispheres actually synchronize across the corpus callosum, the band of tissue in
Mhm.
between the two. And so essentially, that's where epiphanies come up, through that
Mhm.
route, when you're actually getting when you're getting the synchronicity of the hemispheres. And then
Mhm.
you could come at that from a metaphysical, spiritual angle. Below delta, there are frequencies called epsilon, which is all metaphysical aspects of it, spiritual
Mhm.
epiphanies, insights, prescience, those kinds of things. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, that's where you get the access to it. And
Mhm.
we're just conditioning the body to go back to zero stress more and more, because
Mhm.
like I said, it's just that the body's gotten so used to it over years or decades, for some people, of being in that zero, or being in stress, chronic
Mhm.
sympathetic stress response, that it almost associates that with being safe, which is, I think, why people are, they feel okay, or they feel fine when they're in stress. And
Right.
also why sometimes people are stressed out or unsettled when I start moving them towards zero stress, because
Mhm.
that is the safe place. But
Mhm.
they've adapted to the stress response for so long, it's become maladaptive, and it's harming every aspect of their health, and holding them back, not only from things like meditation and enhancing, but healing
Mhm.
ultimately. And
Right.
so essentially, I have to start getting the body to go back to that zero stress point more and more, so that it can oscillate around it, go through stress and relaxation as it needs to call on those functions, and then learning,
Mhm.
and rather remembering that that is the safe place, you know. And this can
Mhm.
be utilized with any other therapies you do, because
Mhm.
when you are at zero stress, the subconscious mind opens up, that 95% of our brain activity. So in that way, whatever therapy you're getting when you're listening to your track, massage, acupuncture, psychotherapy, that's sinking into the system. That's sinking into the subconscious mind that's now absorbing it. Like you take a digestive enzyme with food to better break down your foods, this is allowing you to get more out of your therapies. So whenever, I'll get therapy every now and then, I'll listen to one of my tracks to anchor that adjustment or treatment in, if you will, so that my body holds it for longer and I can get more out of it.
It's like
Yeah,
supercharging it.
I want to get the most out of that session, right? So it could be an hour or something like that. I want to make the most use out of that I can.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like what somebody could expect from a session with you. Like, okay, I'm going in there. How does this exactly work? Like, what does the equipment look like? What am I going to be doing? Those kinds of things. So, say they come in for a 30-minute free consultation. What can they expect in that consultation?
Yeah, the free intro to biotuning session for 30
Mhm.
minutes is available to everyone. And that's essentially where I'm just I'm letting them lie down on the sound table without any input, and I'm hooking them up with the sensors for the wrist to collect the heart rate, and I'm just measuring the stress response for like 10 minutes or something. They're just lying there, relaxed, 10 minutes out of your day just to not do anything. And essentially from there, once that's finished, I let them get up, I show them their stress response, and then I might ask them 2 or 3 times during that, how do you feel? Because I want them to relate how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis with what exactly is going on with their body. Because I think
Mhm.
it's important and invaluable to have that information. And I also believe that people are entitled to that. So that's
Mhm.
kind of why I do the free 30-minute, because I want them to have that information.
Mhm.
I can bounce that for you here, or you can, start approaching different aspects of your life in other ways, whatever
Mhm.
that might look like, right? Or you can do both, right? Because then, when you have your track and you are utilizing it in a day-to-day setting, you can flow through the day without carrying your experiences behind you. You can
Mhm.
experience life without actually life living itself through you, and it just wears you down. And the thing is, it takes time, it really does, to balance
Yeah.
the stress response out. But it's probably not going to take the however many years or decades it took you to get there. But
Mhm.
just like any good or bad habit, you want to be consistent with it, because the body
Mhm.
wants to be back there, it really does. But if you don't set aside the time for it, like anything, that's
Mhm.
it's really just a priority. Do you prioritize your health or not? Then
Oh,
it's not going to happen.
exactly. No, totally. It's all about self care. And I think that people are becoming more aware of the fact that we need to take care of our vessels before we're of, you know, the most benefit to society. and to our families and to our friends. Like, unless we take care of ourselves, we're, not whole and complete and can't give from the overflow, shall we say, to others in our lives, right? Like our best version, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can change the world. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot going on, but if you're stuck in a survival stress response, how much are you inhibiting yourself from actually making a meaningful change? And it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to tell people to make a change. So my approach is I just, I do this in entrainment. I've done it for years for myself and, work on different aspects of my health. And, you just want to show people how much you can actually excel. And then they come and ask you about what you're doing rather than you trying to tell them something. And it's
Mm-hmm.
more organic that way. Because
Mm-hmm.
if they're not going to approach you willingly, then they're not going to stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you share the information and you do your part to take care of yourself, especially with something like this,
Mm-hmm.
then there's an interest and a spark and a synchronicity when they come and ask you about it, and that experience is fully felt out. And I believe every experience is purposeful in this way, but it's fully felt out, and then that almost sets an anchor in their mind about what they noticed, and they might come back to it, they might not, but essentially you're not forcing anything, just like we're not forcing the stress response to go back. We're just encouraging it. We're seeing how good can feel.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are day in, day out, they're okay, which is a tragedy in some ways and how I think
Yeah.
about it, then,
Yeah.
then it's like, how far can we go? Well, how far do you want to go? It's up to you.
Yeah, exactly. But I find that people need to have that interest and that spark to investigate things. So they tend to see what other people are doing to get results, right? So if this is something that would be of benefit, like I'm excited to try it for myself. I had the 30-minute session and now I'm going to do a track with you, which I'm really, really excited about. And being able to use that every day. For me, like my mind is like so busy all the time. So it's hard to even know when you're in a rest state, when your body feels like it's never resting, but it's a normal state for me. So it
Yeah.
like when you asked me how I was like, oh, okay, I don't really, because I'm not really in my body, right? So
Hmm.
I think that helps people ground into their body, the work that you're doing as well, and feel into that. Like, am I in stress or am I not? Like, am I relaxed? And then they become more aware of what they have to do to reach that state, right?
Yeah, and the awareness is really important too, because essentially there are changes after the very first session. I know that, and sometimes people
Mm-hmm.
notice it, sometimes they don't. But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, it's because there are all these processes happening at the same time in our body. So I don't want my small mind up here interfering with big mind, where my body knows how to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially, like I said, there are always changes happening, but until our awareness catches up to that, we're not going to notice it. But the
Mm-hmm.
more you're able to relax and do experiences, the more you allow yourself to feel it, the more you're anchored in the now, where there's all this certainty and no anxiety can actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
That's where everything just blossoms from there. Life seems to come together perfectly. Of course, you want to
Mm-hmm.
have plans and so on, but essentially, if you plan your whole life, you're not experiencing it. You're always
Yeah.
waiting for the next thing to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so this really allows people to come to a zero point where they can feel relaxed with where they are, so that they can
Mm-hmm.
feel the experiences fully, and then know what they need to do without even asking the question about what they need to do. They just
Mm-hmm.
know it, right? Because you can't
Exactly.
force a feeling, just like you can't force instinct. It just
Right.
happens. But if you're so tight and wound up from anything and everything that comes at you, because the 21st century is so noisy, why would I
Mm-hmm.
listen to my feelings? I don't know what's going to happen next. I could
Yeah.
be anything could take me out.
Mm-hmm.
So just bring down the tone of that, put the energy that we do have back into the reservoir of the body, let it work on its list of things to do, and then flow through life again.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, I'm really excited that you're one of our angels and allies here at Clair-i-tea. Just to let everybody know, we're taking bookings for Justin. He'll be here on August the 23rd. So if you'd like to book a free biofeedback or a full session and get a track, um,
Biotuning, yeah.
biotuning, yeah. So sorry, I said feedback. So you can do that here at Clair-i-tea. You can call us 587-596-3333. We probably will be doing some more information sessions in the fall. I'm assuming where, we can have a group of people come in like we did before. There was a lot of people interested, but only a few people showed up, which was, kind of strange. But we hope that, if you show an interest in this, that you actually show up for yourself, and do the work, really.
It only
So,
takes one. Honestly, when I do one session, if people are concerned about time and funds, I can send them the rest of their tracks. It's
mhm,
easy. There's no excuse not to. And you just have to lie down, listen to your track every day. That's it.
mhm.
It's
But
not like there's anything else.
that at some point for yourself anyways, or reading a book, or
Yeah,
making supper. You can be listening to your track, like, really, we really just need to take the time to care for ourselves, right?
sure. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of information to this. My website, vibrationalinstinct.com, has a lot. People can check
Mhm.
that out. Contact me directly. And then the Heal documentary, HEAL, if anyone's
Mhm.
seen it. My
Yes.
instructor, Jeffrey Thompson, plays a significant role in that documentary that I've seen literally 20 plus times. And,
Mhm.
there's a lot of great information there
Yeah.
because you don't need to know all of it. A lot of people don't really care too
Mhm.
much. It's just get me out of this. Well,
Yeah.
let's just start here because here's the only now that there is.
Yeah, you got to start someplace. And, I think the other thing that's key is we have to train ourselves out of that instant fix that, pharmaceuticals and different companies have fed us with. Here's a painkiller, just kill the pain, but you're not taking care of the symptom or what actually created the disease or whatever it is. So, some of these things, we have to train ourselves and train our minds and train our bodies to do them just like you would if you were training for the Olympics. Just remember that. Yeah.
I just want the body back on board. It's just
Mhm.
all I can, even though I have frequencies for things related to, autism, ADD, ADHD, all I can legally say is that I'm modulating the autonomic nervous system. And then the words of my instructor, if you get better and your symptoms go away, that's your fault. I don't, I'm bringing it back to that point and we're getting the body back on board. So whatever you are giving it, their body's
Mhm.
making good use of it.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Justin, and we look forward to having you hang out here at Clair-i-tea quite a bit, and hope to build something fantastic. All right. Well, with that,
Thank you
we'll
so
say,
much. Yeah.
yeah, you're welcome. Goodbye. God bless. Join us next Wednesday at 10 a.m. for the next Angel and Ally. Have a good day.